When the first whispers began circulating about troubling concerns involving Rob Reiner, most people in the entertainment world assumed they knew exactly how it would unfold. The expectation was almost automatic. A carefully composed statement, measured language, respectful distance, a reminder about privacy, perhaps a request for understanding. That is the standard formula in Hollywood when sensitive matters surface. It is predictable, polished, and deliberately restrained. Instead of a crafted press response, what emerged was something unfiltered and deeply emotional. When Sally Struthers finally spoke, there was no script in front of her, no protective buffer of corporate phrasing. What people witnessed felt immediate and painfully real. It was the kind of raw honesty that makes viewers uncomfortable not because it is inappropriate, but because it feels too intimate, too personal. Almost as if you are overhearing something you were never meant to hear. Sally was not speaking as a casual acquaintance or a former colleague looking for relevance. She had grown up alongside Rob. Their bond began decades earlier on the set of All in the Family, where they spent formative years together. That shared history created something deeper than a professional connection. It created a kind of lifelong loyalty. And as she made clear, that loyalty never disappeared when the cameras stopped rolling. What she shared was not nostalgia. It was not a sentimental look back at old memories. It was the release of something heavy she had been carrying for months. And what she implied carefully, but unmistakably, challenged the public's understanding of what had really been happening behind closed doors. Her remarks did not come out of nowhere. According to those familiar with private conversations in the industry, concerns had already been quietly circulating. Some of those worries had reportedly reached people close to Tom Cruise in recent days. Still, Sally did not present her words as accusations. She did not claim proof. She spoke from a place of fear and concern, describing what she believed to be deeply troubling dynamics unfolding in private. Perhaps the most startling admission she made was that she had stayed silent for a long time. Not because she was indifferent, not because she did not care, but because she was trying to protect Rob's dignity. She explained that remaining quiet had not been easy. In fact, it had weighed on her. But eventually, she reached a point where she believed silence might cause greater harm than speaking up. To illustrate the depth of their relationship, she shared a memory from the early days of All in the Family. After 8 episodes had been completed and the show quickly climbed to number 1, the cast was riding a wave of confidence. During a break in filming, she approached Norman Lear and brought up her original audition. She reminded him that she had been one of the final 4 contenders, alongside Penny Marshall. As part of the audition process, they had performed improvisational scenes with Rob. At the time, Sally admitted she had assumed Penny would secure the role. Rob was living with her and preparing to marry her. It seemed logical that he would feel more natural, more supportive, perhaps even more invested in her success. Sally remembered wondering whether she had truly been the funniest person in the room during those improvisations performed for studio executives. Why? When she shifted to present-day concerns, her tone changed. She spoke directly about Rob's son, Nick Reiner. She was careful with her language, clarifying that she was expressing concern, not filing allegations. Yet her voice carried unmistakable frustration. This was not about reputation management. It was about fear. Then she delivered a sentence that silenced everyone listening. We all saw the bruises on his soul, but we were too afraid to ask about the bruises on his arms. She was not describing literal wounds. She was describing emotional damage. The kind that does not show up in photographs, but leaves visible strain in someone's eyes. Sally then recounted the final lunch she shared with Rob just weeks before everything unraveled. It was the last time she saw him face to face. She described a man who seemed diminished, withdrawn, restless. He checked his phone repeatedly, reacting to every vibration as if anticipating something dreadful. When she gently asked if something was wrong, his response lingered with her long after. At the time, she interpreted those words as stress related to politics, industry pressures, or powerful figures exerting influence. She did not initially assume anything darker. But in hindsight, those words carried a different weight. She reiterated that she was not accusing anyone of a crime. What she was describing, she said, was emotional fear, the slow, corrosive kind that erodes someone from the inside. According to information later shared, Nick's medication for schizoaffective disorder had been adjusted roughly a month before the murders. Rob and Michelle Reiner were reportedly aware of the change and concerned about noticeable behavioral shifts. They were alarmed, but uncertain how to proceed. Attempts to learn why the medication had been altered yielded little clarity. The only response given, she said, was ominous. "You're going to be shocked when you find out." As more people began reflecting on recent events, similar concerns surfaced. That is when Tom Cruise's name entered the conversation. Not as an accuser, not as a whistleblower, but as a longtime friend who had known Rob for decades, dating back to their collaboration on A Few Good Men. Their relationship extended beyond professional respect. It was personal. Insiders claim that Tom had privately expressed concern well before the situation became public. Nothing has been officially confirmed. No formal accusations have been filed. But the fragments of information paint a picture of a man under tremendous strain within his own family. According to anonymous sources, Tom allegedly witnessed a volatile confrontation firsthand during a November visit to the Reiner home. What was meant to be a routine meeting reportedly escalated into a tense scene centered on Nick, who was said to be shouting at Michelle and demanding access to a restricted trust fund tied to substance recovery conditions. While there were no allegations of physical violence, the emotional intensity reportedly unsettled everyone present. Tom is said to have stepped between them in an effort to calm the situation. Later, he allegedly confided to someone close to him that Nick's demeanor disturbed him deeply. He described an unsettling, vacant expression that felt unpredictable. Sources claim Tom later warned Rob directly, telling him bluntly that he was not safe and needed to consider removing himself from the environment. In reflecting on his own past struggles, Tom reportedly admitted he once behaved recklessly himself and required discipline to regain stability. His words were not meant as judgment, but as a warning born of experience. Rob's response, according to those close to him, was heartbreakingly familiar. He defended his son. He insisted that Nick was sick, not malicious. He believed another chance might make the difference. That belief was not weakness. It was love. But love intertwined with denial can become dangerous. Over time, Rob began distancing himself from friends. Invitations were declined. Calls went unanswered. Even longtime colleagues from all in the family sensed something was wrong. A planned reunion dinner was quietly declined without explanation. One day, Sally drove past his home during daylight hours. Every blind was closed. The house felt sealed off, heavy and silent. She texted him to say she was nearby. Hours later, he responded with a brief message, "Not a good time. He's home." Those words now feel ominous. Financial pressure added to the strain. Sally revealed that Rob had been quietly selling assets, not for luxury, but to manage mounting issues connected to Nick. She did not present financial documents. She described exhaustion, constant problem-solving, the belief that money could prevent chaos from reaching the surface. Months earlier, Rob had suffered a serious fall down the stairs during a family gathering. He sustained a broken wrist and facial bruising. It was labeled an accident. Yet when Sally visited him in the hospital, something felt off. The bruises did not seem consistent with a simple fall. When she gently asked if there was more to the story, he looked away and cried without answering. Tom reportedly offered to pay for a secure rehabilitation facility far removed from Hollywood influences. Nick declined. Rob could not force him. Sally described a pattern. Brief periods of calm followed by renewed tension. Apologies that restored trust just long enough for the cycle to begin again. It was not daily chaos, she said. It was psychological exhaustion. When asked why she was speaking out now, she answered plainly, "Hollywood protects its own until silence is no longer possible." At 77, having already endured personal loss, she no longer cared about maintaining appearances. She emphasized Michelle Singer Reiner's quiet strength. describing her as the mediator who absorbed the most strain. Michelle reportedly admitted she had begun locking her bedroom door at night, confessing, "I wake up to the sound of footsteps in the hall and my heart stops." The final incident, detectives reportedly told Sally, unfolded gradually. Neighbors in Brentwood heard raised voices, but hesitated to intervene. Rob contacted private security rather than emergency services, seeking calm rather than criminal consequences. By the time help arrived, it was too late. Now, as Nick remains in custody and legal arguments take shape, public narratives are forming. Mental health will be discussed. Responsibility will be debated. But Sally insists this was not a sudden collapse. It was a slow build-up. She fears history will be rewritten to portray Rob and Michelle unfairly. She described Rob's greatest flaw as excessive hope, believing patience and forgiveness could fix anything. The funeral will reportedly be private. Tom is said to be assisting discreetly to ensure peace and security. Sally plans to read one final letter to Rob, representing the conversation they never finished 3 weeks before everything fell apart. There is a painful truth buried in this story. Films often teach that love conquers all. Rob himself directed stories that reinforce that belief. But real life is not a fairy tale. Sometimes love cannot save someone unwilling to accept help. Sometimes it drags everyone down. Sally did not speak out for attention. She did it to restore Rob's humanity. She said that in his final moments, he was not a celebrated director. He was a father, afraid, exhausted, and heartbroken. As legal proceedings begin and potential digital evidence, smart home data, recordings, and logs are examined, one truth remains. The warning signs were there. The isolation, the tension, the pleas for help.